EECS 481, where today we're going to talk about how to organize your time specifically for software engineering. So today we'll be talking about why are we talking about scheduling for EECS 481. We're also going to go into a deep dive as to how the course is structured for you to practice the skill of scheduling. And what does that mean for you as a student? We'll go over some student quotes and then wrap it up with 4 habits to practice in the course when it comes to scheduling. So, why talk about scheduling in an EECS class? Well, throughout this course, we talked about how in software engineering, the dominant activity is reading and maintaining code. But just because it's dominant doesn't mean it's the only activity, as software engineering also involves managing your time, planning work in advance, and meeting many different deadlines at once. In real software projects, engineers are expected to work on multiple tasks in parallel, face deadlines with different dates and times. For example, handling stand-ups that may or may not happen twice or once a week, doing demos once a month, maybe doing a presentation in front of the CEO or other managers. And they're not going to be scheduled at the same time or even the same date. You're going to receive information across different formats. You're going to get emails from managers, maybe some documents from other companies or other parts of the department. And you might have to also balance the meeting notes that your coworkers are making. All of this, you're responsible for tracking your own work. Now, that would mean that learning how to organize your time is therefore a core software engineering skill, one that you get to practice in EECS 481. So, how is this course structured to intentionally have you practice this skill? Well, not only does this course not provide a single unified list of all assignments or deadlines, but we scatter them across different platforms. For example, deadlines and participation activities might be located in the EECS 481 webpage. Well, most assignments will be. But for example, if you're trying to search for when certain assignments are due, your better luck is looking them at the Gradescope and AutoGrader, where you'll be submitting them. And of course, this means that not all assignments will be submitted in the same location. There will be other locations, Gradescope and AutoGrader. In addition, our primary way of communicating with you will be with Piazza, which may be different from other courses where they might be expected to email you or other platforms. So keep that in mind. This structure reflects how work is organized in real software engineering settings, where information is rarely centralized in one place. So, what does this mean for you as a student? Because there's no single unified list, you are expected to create your own system for tracking work in this course. For example, identifying those deadlines, whether that be on the web page or on the other platforms, recording both the date and time something is due, because not every assignment or quiz will be due on the same time. Keeping track of recurring assignments and quizzes and participation activities if you're in section 002. Planning work before the deadline is important, not at the deadline. EECS 481 is not a course that offers a very generous late due date policy. Make sure to read that in the EECS 481 homepage. So that means if you complete an assignment after the deadline, we are very likely to not accept it. So make sure you plan on working on things before the deadline. This is not meant to make the course harder, but to help you practice an essential professional software engineering skill of scheduling and balancing deadlines. So, I understand, scheduling is hard, but you're not alone. We've had several students report missing deadlines, and it's not because they didn't understand the material, but because they struggle to keep track of when things are due. For example, we have some quotes of some students in the past talking about feeling like they're a very organized person, but still missing reading quizzes or other assignments. Some people forgot to check certain platforms, or acknowledge that even though they knew certain reading quizzes were going to be released, still missing them. We want to help you avoid this problem. And the good news is that we can prevent it. The issues described in the previous slide are not about effort or intelligence. They're mostly caused by relying on memory instead of reminders, assuming one platform will notify you, not accounting for different due dates, and planning to do work too close to the deadline and thus running out of time. But with a number of intentional habits that you can practice, these problems can be largely avoided. So let's talk about it. What habits can you practice while you're enrolled in Weeks 481? Habit number 1. We talked about how we don't offer a unified deadline list, but that doesn't mean you can't create your own. Since there is no single unified list, you should create one for yourself. For example, you can make or open up a Google Doc and write down all the assignments, quizzes, participation activities that are due for that semester. Make sure you write the name of each assignment, quiz, and write the exact due date and time. Because, for example, homework 0 for this particular semester is due on a Wednesday, but the reading quiz is due on a Monday. And not only that, they're due at different times. One is due at midnight, one is due at 1:30. You also want to keep track of the site to turn it in. For example, homework 0 is due on the auto grader, but reading quiz 0 is due on Gradescope. And I'd recommend also adding whether you've added that checklist or that assignment to your own calendar, especially if you rely on a calendar to keep track of when your classes are or when other extracurricular activities are. You'd probably want to also add homework assignments so that you'd keep reminded on when things are due. Now, this list does not need to be fancy, it just needs to exist and be kept up to date. But talking about using your Google Calendar, we do have an Weeks 481 Google Calendar that lists some major assignments, lecture dates, and office hours that you might want to use. This calendar, we also display it in the software engineering webpage, and you can click the Add to Google Calendar on the left-hand side that we've boxed in green, and it automatically adds this calendar to your own calendar so it's easier for you to view and have access to. Now, it does not include every due date or quiz or participation activity and should be treated as a reference. Now, if you add it, we highly recommend that you layer your own reminders on top of it, especially for recurring activities like reading quizzes and participation. And talking about recurring activities, you might want to consider adding some recurring reminders or events in your Google Calendar. For example, let's say that you open your Google Calendar and you want to add reading quizzes. Reading quizzes for this particular semester are due right before class, every class. So we're going to add a reminder that right before class, we are going to submit our reading quiz, remind us that it's due right before class. We're also going to add a note indicating that it's going to be due on Gradescope because, different platforms. And we're going to make sure that we remind us not only on the lecture that happens to be on Monday for this particular course, but also on the Wednesday. And the awesome thing about Google Calendar is that you can also add some notifications. For example, let's say that you do rely more on email. Maybe you want to send yourself an email to remind yourself to do the quiz 24 hours before it's due. We can do that very easily on the Google Calendar by indicating an email notification reminder for 24 hours prior to the due date, and it'll send us a reminder. We can then save it, and now we've seen that we have our reminder made as an event on the Google Calendar. This is something that you might want to consider practicing doing in Weeks 481. But what about time management strategies? Maybe you want to try your hand at the Pomodoro technique. The Pomodoro technique is a way to structure focused work using short timed intervals. For example, let's say you're working on homework 1A. You might want to do that for 25 minutes, work on it 25 minutes, take a break for 5 minutes, and then repeat the cycle. And after 4 cycles, you then end up taking a longer break, maybe 10 or 30 minutes. The goal is to start making work feel easier and to limit mental fatigue. Sometimes it can feel very daunting to start on a homework assignment, especially in Weeks 481, where we have you read quite a bit of code. With this structure, it might encourage you to do a little bit of work, little by little, but then get a lot more motivation. Research suggests the Pomodoro technique may not increase total task completion, but it can reduce fatigue and distraction, increase motivation to return to work, and lower the effort required to get started. The nice thing about the Pomodoro technique is that it's flexible. If you find working for 25 minutes straight is not great for you, you can reduce it. If you want to work for longer, you can increase it, and you can change it each time. You do not have to keep it consistent each cycle. Change it for what works best for you. This is especially useful when tasks feel intimidating or when deadlines are still far away. We also have the time boxing technique. Time boxing means deciding in advance how much time you will spend on the task rather than working until it is done. For example, instead of just saying finish homework 5A, you might actively plan out that you will work on 5A for 90 minutes on a Sunday afternoon and maybe another 90 minutes on Tuesday afternoon. Time boxing is meant to help by preventing tasks from expanding indefinitely, making large assignments feel more manageable, and encouraging earlier starts instead of last-minute work. That way you can face some certain issues. If there's something that's blocking you, you have enough time to come to office hours to ask us about it. This technique is also commonly used in software engineering with sprints, iterations, and scheduled work blocks. This is a great opportunity to practice handling this type of technique in a class. So what's the final takeaway? This course is intentionally designed to help you practice skills such as scheduling and managing deadlines that real software engineers use every day. We want you to practice tracking information that appears in multiple places, managing deadlines with different dates and times, creating your own systems of reminders and planning, such as calendars or writing a list about all the things that are due, scheduling work before deadlines, not at the deadline, because we don't want you to run out of time. If you take one thing away from this video, let it be this. Do not rely on memory. Build a system that works for you. Practice, work with different things. Maybe you find that some techniques work for you and others don't. And in X481, it's a great opportunity to practice that.